Hi, I'm Andy Jones, your host for Art Talk. We are going to be painting a impressionistic flamingo, and it's got all of the tropical vibes you could ever want. I have here the downloadable pattern, and there will be a link in the description box below the video so that you can download your own flamingo. And I have transferred mine to my canvas panel using gray transfer paper so that you can see I've got my flamingo ready to paint. I am using an 8x16, and I cut this out of a larger canvas panel so that you can always make the size canvas that you want. We've done chickens.
Yeah, we got the chicken behind you.
Yeah, we've done chickens. We've done, we did a turkey. We've done other birds, but we haven't done a flamingo. And this is one of those birds that all you need to do is see the silhouette of it and you know exactly what bird it is. There's no question about it. They are all over the globe. They are in mountains, in beaches, lagoons, lakes. They are everywhere. We are going to start with our background, and it transitions from purples and grays down to this bright turquoise and aqua, and I'm going to show you how to do that now.
Did you know that a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance?
I did not, but it makes sense because they are super bright pinks and oranges, and you can't get away from their incredibly bright color. So I'm going to start by putting out a couple of gray colors on my palette, and you can mix these grays by just using pure black and white and some pale gray, and we're going to use these to tone down some purple colors. So we're going to use lavender and light lavender. We're going to get started with these colors, and we're going to then add some of our kind of tropical blues and aquas to this. So I'm using a 1-inch flat brush, and I don't wet the brush before I start. I'm going to start up at the top, which is going to be a little bit darker, but I don't want super bright purple. So I'm going to take some of my lavender and mix it in with some of my medium gray color. I'm going to start, and I'm going to do this in just kind of vertical pulls, little vertical strokes, and just pick up more paint as you need it. Every time we brush mix a color, we're going to have some variations in the color that we put on the canvas. So I added a little bit of pale gray to this, and you can see that we've got a difference going on there. And we want to be able to see all the different colors that we are putting on the canvas, but we don't want them to be jarring. And I'm going to now pick up a little bit of light lavender and some pale gray, mix those together, and we'll just continue to add this in. See the vertical brush marks that I'm making, and if there are too many of them, I can just kind of sweep over them to soften those brush marks. So you get a nice mottled background. So I'm going to use a little Calypso Sky, which is just about as tropical a blue as you could want, and then a lighter tropical blue that's got a little bit of an aqua color cast to it is a color called Patina. So we'll be using these two colors as well. I'm going to get a little shop towel here so that I can wipe some of that purple out of my brush and be ready to use some of these blues. So let's just pick up a little bit of Calypso Sky and a little bit of pale gray. We don't want this to be too bright too quick. So I'm going to start right below my purple, and I'm working this color up, and you can see we create a nice transition from purple into blue. And again, we can just soften some of this out. If you leave a little bit of a little flare of color, that's going to be perfectly fine. We can try to stay out of our flamingo as best we can, but it's better to go inside your design a little bit as opposed to leaving a white halo around that flamingo. Yep, and there I just went right into the head, but it's better to come inside your design than to leave that white halo around your subject matter. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of patina over here and just kind of blend that in. And no matter how I try, I'm sitting here looking at my finished example, this background is going to be different. And that's, I think, the way it ought to be, because you just can't do anything the same way twice. So I've just picked up a little bit more of this Calypso sky, and we're simply putting variations of these blues and grays on our painting. And vary the length of your vertical strokes. Really do love this background because it's so much of, it's like a mosaic of great tropical colors, given that kind of 60s groovy look to our flamingo. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of white out on my palette now so that I can create some different color mixtures. All right, so picking up some of that white, and I can go into any of these puddles here on my palette, and we're just lightening it up, raising the value, making it lighter, and we're gonna just kind of apply this in that exact same way. And softening it in to the area right above. This does take a little time. I can't sugarcoat that. You can't rush this. I'm going to add a little bit more of my light lavender over here and a little bit of pale gray. The gray keeps these colors from being too intense so that your background stays in the background and lets the flamingo really be the star of the painting. Now, Stephen, have you been to the zoo here in Atlanta?
I have a long time ago.
They have a beautiful flamingo exhibit right at the front of the zoo when you come in. And I think they do that because the flamingos are awake during the day and they're busy doing things, whereas you can walk around sometimes in the middle of the day and it's like, is every animal taking a nap? I used to go rollerblading over at the zoo, and I remember one day was skating around in the empty parking lot. Parking lot was right up against the backside of the zoo, zipping down, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, there is a big old giraffe in my way. Giraffe had walked right up to the fence and stuck its big neck over. It was just hanging out there right where I was skating. So it's fun to be able to skate over there and see the animals. All right, so I've added some more Calypso sky in here. You can see we've got all these different little colors going on in the background, and I just keep moving up and softening it into the layers that are above it. I'm gonna take some light lavender and a little bit of pale gray and add some of that over here so that we are kind of bouncing our colors around, making sure that we have a nice kind of balance of colors. And make sure that you vary the shape of these colors as you put them on so they don't all end up, you don't want them to be just stripes of color going across your canvas. And we will come back to this background after we've finished painting our bird, and we'll add some more of those beautiful little color flares in there. And we just continue to pick up colors from our puddles that we've made here on the palette. And you can see we've got some blue with some purple in it, which is different than the other colors that we've had previously. And I pick up a little bit of my medium gray and just tone down this bright Calypso sky a little bit and creating a different color. And we'll blend this in. And you can see the technique is pretty easy. We're not going to do anything that's difficult for you. Sometimes I do a lot of steps, but each one of those steps is absolutely manageable. And up here at the top of the canvas, it is pretty dry, so I've got very little paint on my brush, and I'm just going to add in a little bit of this blue up over some of this purple just to add some interest. So we're just going to add in some blue on top of the purple, and we're not really blending this in. We're just letting the color drag off the brush, and that really softens that up a little bit and relates the purples up at the top to those down below and the blues up into the purples. And now we are going to dry this background before we start on our bird. Our background is completely dry, and remember when I said it would be best to stay out of our flamingo? Well, we didn't stay out of it. You know, it always happens like that, Stephen. You plan for the best, but you have to have a backup plan in case things don't work out the exact same way. So because our oranges and pinks are not going to have the covering power that we would all like pink to have, I'm going to use my white and a little number 8 flat brush, and I am simply going to start inside my flamingo, and wherever I've gotten blue or purple into the bird, I am going to cover it up with just plain white paint. And there's no special technique to this, just fill it in. All right, so I've got one coat on here and there's still a little bit of blue showing through, so we're going to take a moment, dry this, and give it a second coat. Okay, now that that first coat of white's dry, I'm just going to quickly give it a second coat to really block out more of that blue. Okay, now that we've got our second coat of white on, I'm just going to set that brush aside and give this a quick dry before we move on to turning our flamingo from a ghost into a beautiful tropical bird. Now, Stephen, how long do you think a flamingo lives in the wild?
Ooh, I have no idea. Maybe like 10 years.
They can live 20 or 30 years in the wild, and in captivity, 40 to 50 years.
Wow. There's probably a flamingo out there that's older than me.
I'm probably sure there are a lot of them.
That's crazy.
It's nice to know that they live good, long lives. Let's put some flamingo color out on our palette now. And I'm going to use some tangerine, which is a nice orangey color. I'm going to also put out a little pumpkin, which is a darker orange. And bright pink, I think, is very appropriate for our flamingo. Flamingos, when they are born, are kind of a gray color, and they have little gray downy feathers and black legs and feet. And they get their beautiful pink orangey colors from eating little shrimp and algae and things like that. So we're going to try to hit somewhere in the middle and make ours an orangey pink flamingo, because this little flamingo's got a varied diet. All right, so I'm going to take some of my oranges, just kind of brush mix them together, and then pick up some of that bright pink, and we have created our flamingo color. If you want your flamingo to be pinker, use more of the bright pink. If you want it a little more orange, use the pumpkin and tangerine. But what we're going to do is start going around kind of the outside edge of our flamingo, and we are going to turn it into this orangey pink color. And keep your brush moving in the direction of the feathers that this bird has. So they kind of scoop around and follow these little areas where they kind of droop off the back. And flamingos are not flightless birds. They can fly incredibly long distances, but they are kind of shady that they really like to fly at night. They don't like to do a lot of flying during the daytime hours. And because of their webbed feet, they are able to run across the surface of the water to pick up enough speed to actually take flight.
What are they up to where they only want to fly at night?
I don't know. I'm sure I have to know good.
What are they planning?
They're planning to take over. I mean, they can fly during the day if they have to, but they just prefer flying at night. It may have something to do with, avoiding predators. I don't know. But a flamingo, they don't necessarily mate for life, but once a flamingo has found a good mate, they do tend to stay together until the union isn't fruitful anymore, and then they will find different partners. So it's like they love each other until all the magic's gone.
Until they get divorced.
Basically, they do have a little flamingo divorce, and their beak is shaped like a hook, and when they feed, they submerge their whole head underneath the water and stamp with their feet to stir things up, and then they scoop all of that up with their beak that's turned basically upside down.
Yeah, they do have kind of a curved. You don't see that in a lot of birds, really.
No, it's a weird shaped beak, but it does the job for them. And I think it might be the Tampa, Florida airport that has a sculpture.
I was just in there, and that thing is huge.
The upside down, the flamingo underwater?
I didn't know if it was underwater.
Which is the big head coming down.
See, I only saw the legs.
Oh, there's a head too.
Okay.
Somewhere
I must have
there.
been on the wrong floor. I just saw flamingo legs, and I didn't know that was coming.
There's a whole head of the flamingo that comes down from the ceiling down.
Maybe I just wasn't looking hard enough.
Well, or, those flamingo legs might have startled you and just been like, didn't look any further, saw enough of that flamingo to stay away.
I was trying to get out of the airport.
And again, I just keep picking up the oranges and the bright pink to kind of make my flamingo color. And we're just filling in the bird with this kind of flamingo pinky orange color. And, everybody's flamingo is a little different because, maybe the shrimp they're eating are a different kind of shrimp or the algae or whatever, but it does really affect their coloration. And they do have extremely spindly legs. And we're going to show you how to paint those in a little while. But it's not nearly as difficult as you might think. All right, and you can see that I'm not too concerned about any brush marks that I see in our bird, and we can let this rest or dry it, and we'll come back and start to add the darker and lighter colors on our bird. All right, I'm going to add a little true burgundy to my palette, which will be the shading color that we are going to add to our flamingo, so that when we need a really dark pink, we've got that to go to. So I'm going to take a little bit of bright pink and a little bit of true burgundy, and we're just making a dark shading color for our bird. And we're just going to kind of put this on wherever our bird is darker. So its back leg is separated from its front leg, and so we're just going to kind of tap some shading color on there, and we'll continue with this part of its wings and tail. So we'll just darken that by tapping and patting some of that color on, and we'll add a little bit of this kind of shading color back there, and kind of in the middle of his or her body we're going to add some of this darkness. And we are doing this kind of with bold kind of patterning of strokes. I'm not trying to blend or actually even paint individual feathers. We're just creating marks that will let the viewer know that we actually have put feathers on this bird. We don't want to overdo it. And again, the silhouette is really what makes the flamingo very easily recognized. So you don't have to put that much effort into painting individual feathers. And we're going to come underneath. I don't really have a chin, but we're going to call it its chin, where the head kind of separates from the neck. And we'll give a little bit of darkness to the front of the flamingo's neck. And again, just short little choppy strokes. giving an indication of feathers, but we're not worried too much about that. Like I said, we're not painting individual feathers, we're just using our brush marks to indicate that this bird is feathered. And now we're going to really kind of shift gears and start putting just different colors of lighter feathers on the flamingo. So I've wiped my brush out pretty well on my shop towel, and I'm going to take a little bit of this pink and add some white to that. So I've got a very pink, very light, bright pink color now, and we'll start adding some of these lighter pink feathers on. And they look different going over that orange than it does here on the palette. So we can adjust for that if we want to. Just pick up a little bit more white and add some more of these kind of little short feathery strokes. Alright, I've added some of my oranges to my pink and white so that I've got a different color of feathers that we are now just kind of stroking on our bird. And again, we're not trying to paint a bunch of individual feathers. We're trying to give the illusion of a very festive feathery bird here. And we'll just continue to make different mixtures of our pinks, oranges, and whites. Leave some little gaps between your feather strokes and you'll get a much more realistic feathery effect. I'm going to highlight the kind of the cheek of the bird and give a little bit of a highlight here to the top of his head. And I'm going to add more white to this. And in order to make sure that you change values, see I've added the white down here to the bottom of the puddle so that I'm not mixing it into the entire puddle, but I've got a much lighter value happening down here at the edge of my paint puddle. And I'm just going to start to kind of develop some lighter feathery marks on our bird. And we'll continue to add some more of these light feathers. Again, try to follow the contour of the bird, and that'll get you a much more realistic kind of feather pattern. You can continue to add more white to lighten up some of these markings, that you get kind of a really cool highlight on your bird feathers. And again, you can still see right down to the base coat that we put on there. So we haven't completely covered everything with these little feathered markings. And I've added even more white, and I'm going to put a few of these kind of brighter highlights on. Not everywhere, because we want to have a variety of lights, mediums, and darks on our bird. Okay. So I think that gives our bird enough feathers like that, but you know me, I can't leave well enough alone. So I'm going to take a little bit of my light lavender and some of this highlight color that I had. So we're going to add some of these light lavender accents to our bird, because it'll just add a lot of interest to the colors that we have going on, because this stuff is in the background, so it would naturally show up on our bird. And I want more of the light lavender, so we'll just add a few of these little marks. And we don't want to turn our bird purple, but we do want to just kind of give a few of these pretty marks. Okay, I think that might be enough, but maybe not. So I'm just going to take some lavender and add that in so that I've got a more intense purple color. And we'll just add a few of these little marks. I think that's enough now, because you can kind of see what's going on there. And let's take a minute and dry our bird so that we don't mess up what we've got already on there when we do our next step. All right, we are going to now start to meld our flamingo into our background. So don't be alarmed. It's not difficult to do. You just have to take your time and do it in slow incremental steps. So I've got a number 12 flat brush, and I'm holding it back in my hand so that it's a little bit, going to get a little bit more painterly effect. So I'm going to take some white, and I'm going to add a little bit of my oranges to this. And I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of my bright pink. All right, I want to get most of the paint off of the brush, and we're going to add this kind of pinky coral color to our background and part of the bird. So I'm going to start just by painting some of this on the bird, and it's not really showing up too much on the bird, which is a very good indication that I've got the color that I want. And I'm going to just kind of brush this out and back into the bird and back out onto the background, and make sure that it has some variation in like the width of this color. And I'm going to add some white to this, and we're going to just start softening this into the background. And you could see how it kind of really does make the bird and the background unified. Now, if you've got too much paint on your brush, it's going to show up a little bit more than you want it to. So less paint is going to be your friend as you do this. And we're going to do this in a number of different places. I'm going to actually do some up on top of the flamingo's head. So I'm adding a little bit more pink to this mixture, but making sure that I don't have too much color on the brush. And we'll start right around the top of his head, and we'll just kind of let it trail off here on the right, and again across the top of his head and trailing off on the left hand side. And you can see I'm painting quite a bit, but I'm not getting a lot of paint on the canvas. That's because I just don't have much paint on the brush. And so we'll alter the color a little bit and add a little bit more of a pinker tone. And with our flamingo, we've still got quite a bit to do on him, but we just want to get it anchored into the background. So our background and our subject matter have more in common. I'm going to add a little bit more white and making sure that I've got a nice kind of peachy, pinky color going on. And I'm going to simply just make a little pulls down from the bird so that we get some of that flamingo color down into the background and around his legs. And again, if you've got too much paint on your brush, you're going to cover up what you've got going on here. I can still see through this sheer color. And again, if you are having too much paint on your brush, you will instantly know it, and you should stop right then and make sure to clean the excess paint off of your brush. So we've got some down here. Let's add a little bit of stronger color up there on the back of our bird. And we'll just add some of that on. Again, making sure that we come onto the bird and onto the background. And again, I can't stress it enough. Very little paint. And I will tell you, it takes a little while to actually execute, but it does make a huge difference in the overall look of the painting. And you couldn't do this while we were actually doing the background, because the orangey, peachy color that we've got on our bird and the blues that we were using in the background would create a not so attractive kind of neutral color, because we would have complementary colors of orange and blue working into each other. And I'm just going to let this kind of carry right across the flamingo's neck and over to the right a little bit. And we'll add now some more white to our brush, work that in, making sure we don't have too much paint. And we'll come back and we'll add a little bit of lighter color right across the top of the bird and carrying it out in either direction. So I'm going to come back down here and add a little bit of that lighter peachy color there and across the top of his little head. All right, so we've got some nice peachy colors working in there. We're going to come back to this. We are not done with that. All right, so I'm going to set my brush aside and I'm going to pick up my liner brush. And before I do that, I want to add a little bit of sunny yellow to the palette. And flamingos have, relative to their body size, they've got fairly small eyes, and their eyes are yellowy orange. So they're kind of scary looking eyes. They're not one of those like an owl that's got beautiful eyes. Nobody ever talks about flamingos' eyes.
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever even seen them.
Well, they're...
The chicken behind you's got some yellow eyes too.
Yeah, but chickens have bigger eyes. The flamingos are just...
Little beady dots.
They're little, well, if you painted tiny little beady dots, then it's going to look even more angry. But we are going to give our flamingo a sunny yellow eye. And then I'm going to take the tiniest amount of true burgundy and make a little bit darker color. And we are going to paint that along the left edge of his eye and kind of down at the bottom to give the eye a little bit of character. But you don't hear, people are not talking about how beautiful a flamingo's eye is. It's all about their pink feathers. All right, so we've got our eye filled in with sunny yellow and we've shaded it with that mixture of sunny yellow and true burgundy. All right, so I've rinsed out my brush and I am going to get out a little bit of pure black. And we're not going to need much pure black at all. So I've got two things to paint with the pure black. The first thing is we're going to give the flamingo a pupil. So I'm going to thin some of my pure black down so that can make just a very small pupil in the center of the flamingo's eye. And don't make it just a pin dot. It's got to have a little bit of size to it. All right, so there is his eye, and I'm going to set my liner brush down, and I'm going to pick up my number 8 flat brush, and we want to paint the flamingo's, the center part of his beak, in with our kind of peachy coral color. So either pumpkin, tangerine, and bright pink, and then we're going to add some white to this, and this goes right next to the flamingo's face and about halfway down his beak. And just fill that in very neatly and carefully. Okay, now back to our liner brush and thinned pure black. We're going to paint the end of his beak with this pure black. And it does have that very distinct kind of hook shape to it. I want to make sure that my liner brush has got a nice point. And where the black meets this kind of peachy color, it's kind of just a little series of lines there, so it's not a harsh separation there. It's very distinctive, but it's not really hard line there. All right, so we're going to fill in the end of his beak with our pure black and make sure that it is shaped as beautifully as you can make it. And then we're going to bring a thin line right up to separate the beak. All right, so let's even get a good close-up of that. So that is our flamingo's beak, but I'm seeing something that I don't like on the shape of mine. So I'm going to just come back and hopefully make a very thin little line there to carry that up and kind of soften that transition a little bit. Okay, that's much, much better. All right, there's our flamingo's little face done. Now, you can do his legs in two different ways. I'm going to show you the way that I did it, is with a number 12 flat brush, even though it is, they're very small, but I'm sure that you can wield your number 12 flat brush and do this. All right, so I'm taking my pumpkin tangerine and bright pink color. I am going to begin to paint the front leg of the flamingo. So basically, if you stand the brush up, you can virtually tap and pull and create a nice thin leg. And flamingos really do oftentimes just stand on one leg with their other leg pulled up under their body.
Yeah, why do they do that?
You know, Stephen, I really wish I was an ornithologist that studies birds, so I can have that answer for you.
I'll throw up a graphic that says why.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
I'm going to Google it later.
Because I don't know. I'm just concerned at how they look when I paint them. And they do have kind of wide knees. There is a back leg that gets painted the same way. I guess if you were, standing all the time, stomping in the mud, you'd probably want to rest a leg every now and then.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. All right, now I'm going to pick up a little bit of true burgundy on my brush to make a darker color. And I'm going to shade the back leg. It disappears behind the front leg. And again, I'm just tapping this dark color on. And then we're going to shade down both legs just by tapping a little bit of this true burgundy on. And it doesn't need to be all smoothly blended in. You can have little darker bits showing up, creates interest on the leg. All right, let's give a start to the reflections in the water. So I've got my peachy color with that little bit of true burgundy on there. And I'm going to start just skimming from the feet out either direction. And then make it a little bit wider here and there. So you could see that it is not the same width all the way across. That would be tragic to have that happen like that. So I'm going to take a little bit of bright pink by itself on my brush, and I don't want too much of this, but I do want to just basically lay the brush parallel to the surface and slightly skim. And you get this beautiful kind of dappled effect of that bright pink on there. And so let's take some of our peachy color and do the same thing like down over here on the lower left side of our canvas. I'm going to add a little bit of white to this to lighten that up. And I can take this same light color and just give a little of that peachy color there in the water. All right, so I'm thinning down a little bit of true burgundy, and I don't want to make these reflections the star of the painting because that's our bird. His legs have to go somewhere, so they go down into the water and we get these little bits of reflection. So right where the leg stops, I'm going to just kind of move my liner brush back and forth and just create a little bit of a reflection there. And since this leg is pretty straight, that reflection is going to be pretty straight. And this leg is at an angle, so the reflection is going to bend back at that same angle. My little marks in the reflections do go horizontal, but this one is mainly going to come back at an angle. And I don't want them to stop at the same area. So this one will stop a little bit shorter. And then we're going to come back and just dab a little bit more true burgundy kind of in the center of the reflection to make that a little bit darker. You don't have to overdo it. That gives everybody enough information to know that there is reflection happening on the water. Now, let's continue on with jazzing up our background a little bit more and making it a little bit more interesting. So I want to make sure that I've got all the paint off of my palette knife, and we are going to add some little vertical marks or little flares of color. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Calypso Sky and load it up on my palette knife and tap it on the palette so that I get a lot of the excess color coming off of the palette knife. And again, less paint on your palette knife, better marks on your painting. So I'm going to start up here at the top and just kind of set the palette knife down and give a little bit of a pull. And you can see how we get this beautiful kind of sputtering effect, which makes this seem a little bit more tropical and a little bit more wet, watery look. All right, so I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to do a little bit of that just here and there over the painting. I can add some patina into that. Again, the most important thing is that you tap on your palette to remove the excess paint. And because your palette knife is a triangular shape, you want to always turn your palette knife so that the edge is horizontal to your painting, and then you can just put that on and let it pull. I can change the color even more by adding a little bit of white into this mixture here on the palette, and again, tapping that excess paint off is crucial. And aiming my, make sure my palette knife is horizontal, I can put a little bit of this on, and every time I need more, I can come back and add it. If you've got too much paint on your palette knife, you'll create a big blob and you will be instantly unhappy with it. So less is the exact amount you want on your palette knife. And make sure your top of your palette knife is horizontal. Set it down and you can add these little flares of color. And we just continue to add these little flares of color, and they can come over what you've already done. We can put some right on top of these reflections to set those into the water instead of looking like they're on top of a canvas. And we're varying the color and the value as we add these little flares of color on. I can come pick up some light lavender, add that in, and add some of those lavender flares to the painting. I love the way that looks, so we're going to do some more of that. And we want to make sure that we are adding colors all over the painting so that they're not just in one spot. And this can be very relaxing and therapeutic as you do this. And we're going to put a few of these little flares up there. So you see now you've got this super intense purple color over that very muted background. Now I'm going to dry all of this so that we can paint all over our canvas and not have to worry about messing up these little color flares that we've got on there. All right, now we just have to add a few little more flares to kind of make our background sparkle a little bit more. So I'm going to use my number 12 flat brush, and I'm gonna start down here at the bottom, and then we'll kind of move up and see where and what color we need to add to the painting. Because you can see here we've got patina, we've got calypso sky, we've got orange, we've got purple, and we've just added these little more intense areas of color. And they're not difficult to do. We just have to remember not to start out with too much paint. We can always build color up, but it's very hard to take it away if you've put too much on at one time. I'm going to take a little bit of my patina. I want to say at random, but you've got to pretty much plan where you're going to put these kind of little marks. And I'm going to just set the brush down and pull, set the brush down and pull. I'm out of paint, so I'm going to come back and pick up a little more and add just incrementally more paint. And a little further pull, I can add a touch of white to this and come back right in the kind of the middle of this little flare and add a little pull of white. All right, so that's one little area done. And we're going to do a bunch of these in various places. So let's do one over here with some of this beautiful calypso sky color, and we'll maybe just set one little brush stroke of that on there. And we can leave that alone. And where else might we want one of these? We've got a little bit of a strong bit of calypso sky here, so we can just emphasize that with a couple of pulls of the brush. Now, one thing that I want you to notice is that they're not the same size. There's a little shorter pull. Here's one that went down further, and we can add another one over here. But what we want is some variety in each of these little flares. So I've added now a little bit of white to my brush, and we'll come back kind of in the center of this flare and just add that little extra splash there. And we'll maybe just take this color that we were just using and see what it might look like right about here. Looks too much like what we just had there, so we'll alter that color. Mix up some more calypso sky. I'm not even sure exactly where I started that, but that looks very pretty. And I think I can leave, I can be happy with that. I can leave that alone. But up here at the top, I might want a little bit more. And just continue to make those little pulls, and then we'll alter that color and come back and add an accent just like that. And we leave that alone. We've played with that enough. We don't need to keep messing with that. So maybe let's take a little bit of our light lavender and see what a little bit of light lavender added here and there. Now this, kind of aim it near where there was some purple. And again, you can play with this a little bit, but not too much. Oh, and where else? We've got some purple here, so let's add a little bit of a flare there with just a accent pulled on. We add a color, we can change it. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this kind of very, very pale purple, that little flare. And you don't want to do 1,001 of these things, because you don't want this for your background to suddenly look like just little splotches of color. But I am going to take a little bit more of my orangey colors and lighten them with white. Make sure that I don't have too much paint on my brush. Let's just add in a little bit of this peachy color here. And I think I want to add a couple of more of these kind of pinky tones done with the palette knife, and we'll just add a little bit up here at the top to help carry some of this light color up. And I think that is all I'm going to do to our little flamingo painting. So they're similar, but not the same. And I hope that you've enjoyed painting this little tropical flamingo with us today on Art Talk. Thanks for joining us for our flamingo lesson on Art Talk today. The link to the downloadable flamingo pattern is in the description box below, as are links to the Art Talk kit and brush set. So we really do appreciate you watching. We hope that if you've got positive things to say, you'll leave us a comment below. And if you would like to leave us a compliment, you can always email us at art_talk@plaidonline.com.